Hey folks, welcome back. I'm David. We're here in my shop where I build Ewor guitars. Well, the day I'm filming this happens to be the very last day of the year 2022. And I just wanted to wish you all out there a very happy and prosperous year 2023. I know it's going to be a great one because 2022 was great, and I know 2023 is going to be even better. Anyway, let's go ahead and get rolling with this video. So this is going to be episode 7 of the series where I'm building this meteorish looking guitar right here. We've got the body made, and the last couple of videos we've been working on the neck, and that's going to bring us to this video, which is, in this one we're going to start working on the scarf joint on the neck. So when you're doing a tilt back headstock on a guitar, there's a couple different ways of doing the headstock, getting the angle onto the headstock. One is using a really super thick piece of wood and just able to cut it. And the other way, the way I like to do it, is with the scarf joint, which is what this is here. So that's basically, we're going to take this piece of wood that was originally part of this neck right here. We're going to saw it off of the neck, and we're going to re-glue it back on upside down like so, and that's going to give us our 14 degrees. And in this video, we're going to go through all the steps I use to make that happen. So, as you know, if you've been watching this series, I'm just now getting into the CNC machine, and I'm getting into designing and using my computer for guitar building, which I'm really loving. I think it's really a great step forward for me in the way I'm going. So I think I want to start off this video with let's draw out this neck and this scarf joint on the computer, and we do all our layouts and make all our measurements to make sure we're doing the right thing before we get cutting away on this piece of wood I've got an awful lot of work into. So anyway, let's go on over to Adobe Illustrator right now and get rolling with that, and we're going to lay it out, and then we're going to get cutting away. Okay, so here we are in Adobe Illustrator, and if you look right here, you can see I have drawn my the profile of my neck shape, and I've got everything, including the heel. I've got the proper taper on the back of the neck. I'm showing my fretboard on top, and I'm showing the proper break angle on the headstock and the proper nut location. Also in my drawing, I have the profile view, the side view of my neck blank, which is this right here. So this rectangle is 36 inches long and 1.25 inches tall, which is what my neck blank is if you turn it up on edge. And this is where we're going to have to begin laying out for our scarf joint. So our scarf joint lays at a 14-degree angle. And in order to get that angle onto this headstock, we're going to have to cut it somewhere in this vicinity on a 14-degree angle cut. We're then going to take this end piece, we're going to flip it over upside down and reattach it on top of the angled cut. So that'll probably make a little more sense once I start doing it. So first thing I want to do is I want to draw myself a line here, about this long, and I want it to run nice and parallel. Okay. So I've got that. Now what I want to do is I'm going to turn that line on an angle of 14 degrees. Okay, which is what we've got right here. And this is going to represent our cut. This is how we're marking our cut. Okay, so let me run that back down to about here. Now, this piece we're cutting off at the end is what's going to ultimately become the headstock. Of course, being 1.25 inches thick, that's far too thick for us. So we're going to wind up splitting it down here. And if you see, I mean, my headstock is only about 7 inches long, but as you can see here, we've got about 12 inches. Well, doing a scarf joint this way, it does take up a little extra space on the piece of wood, but also we have that end with our indexing pin on the end here that we're going to want to cut off too. So anyway, so I think right about here, maybe I'll even shove it down just a little bit. That ought to be a pretty good spot for our headstock. And that's about 12.5 inches in from the end of the boards where we're going to start our cut. So now what I want to do is I want to copy this. Okay, and we're going to use this to make we're going to basically mimic our cut right here. So we're going to put those two guys right next to each other. But let's get them a little closer than that. Even closer. Now we want to trim off all of this excess stuff. We're going to use a shaper tool. Just like that. Now we've got our two pieces. Okay, our neck piece. Our neck piece is on this side and our headstock piece is on this side. Now, I guess while we're here, why don't we go ahead and flip this, or let's go ahead and trim it down to thickness. So let me grab this line that's we're sitting right up here and move it down to about here. Maybe a little bit more. Let's zoom in on that. We're going to bring it down just a little bit more. Okay, that looks pretty good for our purpose here. All right, now let's go ahead and use that same shape tool to go ahead and get rid of what we don't need here now too. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and flip this guy over. Oop, hang on, let me join them back together here. Okay. So here's our piece, and we'll get rid of this little guy. I don't know what he's doing there. Okay, so now this is basically our headstock piece. So now we have to rotate this guy down at the same 14 degrees. So we're going to go -1.4, enter, and there's our piece. Now we're just going to simply glue them back on, just like that. And that becomes our scarf joint and the angled headstock. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and transfer this drawing of the neck up onto my neck blank and see how it all fits. Okay, that looks beautiful. So we fit right on there. We got plenty to cut off. Remember, I've got that pin up here I got to cut off, so I've got plenty on this end to cut off, and I've got plenty down here to cut off, and I think that looks great. That is how we're going to do it. So let's head on over to the bandsaw and get it set up on the jig I've got for this and get cutting away. Okay, so here's my neck blank, just like I was showing you on Adobe Illustrator. And this is the narrow end of the stripes here, so this is my headstock end. So I'm going to do just what I did on the computer. Is I'm going to come in from this end. I'm just laying this out again because I'm kind of crazy like that. Okay, there's basically my mark, my cut line. Okay, now I'm going to use my protractor that's set at 14 degrees. I'm going to draw my line right there. Now I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to go ahead and mark my 5/8 of an inch there and way on down here. Okay, so there's my headstock piece. I'm going to flip that, and that is still going to give me, look, I'll have 10 inches here. So my headstock will actually cut off about here somewhere. So just about right. I'm cutting off 2 3/4 inches off the end of this thing. Okay. So then my, let's see, my, the cut length here is 2.5. So I had 2.5 inches to here, right here. And that's basically my nut line right here. And that gives me plenty. 18, 21, 22, yeah, so I'm good. That's really just right. I think I'm very happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead, and now that I've verified all this on the actual piece of wood itself, I'm going to get it and clamp it onto my jig here. So the bottom of my cut should cross my jig right about there, and the top of my cut crosses the jig right about here. Anywhere in this general vicinity is going to give us a good job. So I think we're good. I'm going to clamp this guy on here, and we're going to take it and run it through my bandsaw. Okay, so this is my jig. It's a simple jig. It just has the top of it here is a couple pieces of plywood, and they are mounted on top of the base at 14 degrees. And I've got a track running on the bottom of the base that is going to run in my T-slot of my bandsaw. And when I cut, it should basically cut right along this edge of this piece of MDF, which is where I'm lining up my, my neck blank on. So I think that looks good. I'm clamped on there nice. I may throw one more clamp on it just for the heck of it. right back over here. And I think we're ready to cut away. Okay, so now that we have our angles cut really nice, they're right on 14 degrees. What we need to do is we have to get these to plane out perfectly with each other. So when we glue them back together, like so, we don't have any kind of a twist or anything, that it's laying on a perfect plane from this surface, angled down and turned down to that surface, all at 14 degrees. So to do that, I'm going to use some double-sided sticky tape, or actually the masking tape and CA glue trick. I'm going to glue this guy on top of here to where these two pieces plane out nicely with each other right about there, okay? And then I've got the surfaces, and I want to use my CNC, of course, because that's what I'm learning how to use, my CNC machine, so I'm trying to use it for everything I can. And now I know some programs on CNCs allows you to do 3D tool paths, which I think you could then use the CNC machine to run up and down this angle and cut this angle at 14 degrees. I don't have that. I use Vectric V-Carve desktop version, so I don't have Aspire, which is a 3D software. And I'm learning how to use Fusion 360, but I'm not at the place yet where I could do this on it. But so for now, I just have to use my 2D software I have. And so I decided I'm just going to run a surfacing toolpath on this, but now I have to hold this guy at a 14-degree angle on the CNC machine to where this is level with the bed and the gantry on the machine, to where when I do a surfacing toolpath on this, it comes out perfectly flat and level, and I could use my 1-inch surfacing bit. So to do that, I came up with this jig right here, which will basically clamp down onto the CNC machine, and this is laying at a 14-degree angle, and I'll be able to double-sided sticky tape my piece to here, and it'll hold that angle on a flat, and I'll be able to surface it off. Now, this looks like an awful lot to do to just get that to happen. That's only one thing I use this jig for. I use it for several steps along the way of making my neck on the CNC machine, so you get to see more of that in the next video. So anyway, so for now, let's go ahead and clamp this down on the CNC machine. We'll get these guys stuck together, stuck on there, and we'll surface this off, and then we'll move on to gluing these parts together. Okay, so what we need to do is we got to create a quick surfacing toolpath for the CNC machine. So I'm going to create a new file here, and we're going to get going, and I'm going to call out my material size. It's going to be a single-sided job. The width is going to be, I'm going to call it 3.5 inches. The length, which is Y, is going to be 9 inches. And the thickness, we're going to call it 0.75. That's not really going to matter for what we're doing. Our 0 position is the material surface, and our XY datum is the lower left-hand corner. That's this guy right here, which is that red dot right there, which means all of our toolpaths are going to originate from that spot. So let's just click OK. So that's my surface I want to surface off, 3.5 by 9 roughly. Of course, if I just do a tool path and use a 1-inch bit, it is going to miss these corners, and I just tell it this size is going to miss the corners. So to be absolutely certain I catch all the edges of this thing, I'm going to draw a rectangle that's larger than this piece of material, which will allow that bit to then cover the entire surface of the piece of wood I want to cut. So let's call it the width. Let's call the width 5 inches. Okay. And let's call the length, let's say 11. Apply. Okay. Now we also want to center align to material in all directions. Okay. So now my rectangle is centered. All right. And that's basically the path that this tool is gonna create, move on. So let's now create a tool path, and we're going to do a pocketing tool path. And I want to use, okay, well, first of all, the start depth is going to be 0 inches. The cut depth, I think I'm going to go, what did I do? Oh, let's do 50 thousandths of an inch, I think. Let's try that. Okay, so we're going to go 0.050. That should give me a 50 thousandths of an inch cut depth. Okay, now I want to get rid of this bit here. And I want to select, I'm going to use a 1-inch surfacing bit. Let's see what we've got here. Flattening. 1/4 inch shank. And, okay, spoil board, let's do this 1-inch diameter, 1/4 inch shank, and that looks good. Let's say select, okay, that's our tool. We're going to do, just because I'm crazy, I'm going to do 2 passes, 25 thousandths per pass. I could always stop it then in between. Let's ramp the plunge move. Let's ramp in over a 2-inch distance. Okay, pocket allowance. Now let's call it 4x9 surface. 1 inch. That means 1-inch bit. That way I'll know in the future. So I'm going to calculate. Okay, so this is basically the tool path that the machine is going to take. Let's preview the visible tool path. And that's both passes. You can see I caught all edges. I think that looks great. I think we can go ahead and run this tool path. Okay, so I'm very happy with the way that came out. I went ahead and drew the headstock on here so I kind of knew where I've got to work it. So the next thing we have to do is we're going to have to glue these two guys together. And I think we're going to have a beautiful joint. But what I have to do, because we've got these stripes going in here, I've got to make absolutely sure that these stripes not only line up here, of course this is getting covered with the fretboard, nevertheless we want these stripes to line up perfectly on this side, and we want to make sure that they line up absolutely perfect on this other side here too. I don't really care so much about this outside edge, whether or not the edge is flush. It doesn't matter because all that stuff's getting cut off. So what I want to do is I'm going to do my best, probably do a little fumbling around with the thing. I want to get this guy lined up, get a clamp on it. Boy, that is looking mighty fine right there. When we flip it over, that's got a twist around. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, while it's like this, I'm going to go ahead and drill a pin in. While this side, I'm going to drill one pin in this end here. I think maybe I'll catch it all the way over here on the corner. And then we could maybe, that'll hold this side in place. Then we could flip it over, rotate it around, and get one of the other sides lined up, and I'll get a pin in there then too. Okay, so we are basically set to go. I've got my two pieces stuck together with these little indexing pins. I think they're going to work good. I've got my Ultra Cat glue out here. I buy this from veneersupplies.com. It is a high performance adhesive, wood adhesive. It was originally formulated for veneer work, but it's also excellent for all types of general woodworking. I love it. I've got that. It's a powdered resin glue, so I've got my powder here. Got a little bit of hot water that's going to use to mix it, and I believe we're ready to go. Okay, that's about as clamped up as I can get that thing. We'll have to wait and see tomorrow how it turned out. Okay, so I pulled this guy out of all those clamps this morning, and I got a really nice, I think I got a really nice seam there. I got a great fit. I've got a really nice angle. I cleaned it up. I took my chisel and I cleaned up the glue and sanded a little bit just to clean it up, but I'm very pleased. I think it looks really good. So right now my headstock thickness is, it's right around 9/16. It's just under 9/16 of an inch thick, which is going to be too thick considering I'm going to be putting laminating a piece on top of this. So I'm going to go ahead. I think the last step in what I'm going to do here for now on this neck blank is I'm going to run it through my oscillating spindle sander down there. I've got a little jig set up, and I'll show you that in a second. We're going to go ahead and thickness this down to its final thickness, as well as we're going to cut the headstock side of the volute right here too, which is going to round it. So I've got a 3-inch spindle in that spindle sander and a 100 grit disc on it, and that should cut that down and give me a really nice curve into that volute too. So we're going to set up there and do that right now, and that'll probably be the last step. Oh, and I'll probably go ahead and cut off this excess up here too, because I just don't need that extra hanging on there. So anyway, let's go on over there to the spindle sander, get set up, and we'll get this thickness down. All right, folks, well, that is about it. That is how I do my scarf joints and how I use my CNC machine to do it. So I'm real happy. I got my stripes to line up really nice, front and back. And the back's the important one. That's the one that's going to show. I've got the first part of my volute cut in here. I've got my headstock thickness down to, this is right around a 1/2 inch thick. I'm going to laminate a piece on the face of it, which is going to bring it back up to 9/16, which is where I want it. And I think it looks good. Oh, and incidentally, so this, the one side of the volute is cut with that 3-inch round spindle on the spindle sander, and that's lined up. I lined that up, right, that peak right at the underneath of the break angle of the neck right there. So I square a line down and I sand it to that spot there, and that's how I start my volutes. So anyway, that's it. That is my neck blanket ready to go. If you come on back next week, we're gonna get this thing down on the CNC machine and start milling away on the thing. So anyway, I hope somebody got a little something out of it. I enjoyed doing it. I'm happy with how it's coming out. And come on back next week and we'll throw this thing up on a CNC. Anyway, God bless you all. Have a wonderful week and a wonderful year, and we'll see you all in the next one.